Starting an agency or any business for that matter, half the battle is starting. The other half is getting the results to stay in business. Numbers make or break any agency. Do I want to have 5,000 clients that pay me $100 a month, or do I want to have 50 clients who pay me $1,000 a month? Business owners, they will pay you as much as your perceived value is in their eyes. I wanted to have a way to stand out from the other agencies that were already offering Google Ads. So my offer was, hey, I'll run your Google Ads for XYZ amount of money, but I'll do Bing Ads for free on top of that.
There's a million and one different ways that you can take a digital agency, and e-commerce, as we all know, is a massive industry and advertising plays a huge role in it. So super cool to have an expert with us today. Tell us your origin story. How did you get into being a Google Ads expert and owning your own agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So the funny thing is, I was never supposed to be an agency owner myself, because back in 2017, as a senior in high school, all I wanted to ever do was find money to buy video games and in-game points for the games I used to play during that time. And after doing a little bit of research, I came to realize there's this something called eBay dropshipping, Shopify dropshipping, and these things where you could actually sell your products to make money online. At that point, because I was so studious, I was just focused on studies, books, all these things. I did not know a world existed online that could actually make you a lot more money than a traditional 9-to-5 job. So flash forward about a year, I got into this online world, started selling stuff from my garage, from my parents' garage. And eventually I started to realize that, hey, you can actually own your own website, start your own website, and do the same without eBay or Amazon controlling your traffic sources and them taking a partial amount from your overall revenue that you get. So that's what I did. I just threw up a website, threw up some ads, because I realized that now that I'm in a different ball game, I can't have people just walking through the door like they did on eBay or Amazon. I had to actually spend money to make money. That's essentially what got me started in the advertising world, the Facebook ads world. Flash forward again 2 to 3 years after I had kind of gotten tired of meta ads, Facebook ads, and just the ongoing circle of making new creatives, I got into something that was a bit easier for my personality, which was Google Ads. It was pretty simple, starting campaigns, running products, and just optimizing based off of numbers, which I'm very good at. So that's what got me into the Google Ads world, and then eventually teaching people on YouTube and starting my agency.
It's quite a story going from teaching yourself as a senior in high school and making some money in e-com to owning an agency. But I really like the fact that you owned a couple brands. You made money through e-com before understanding advertising and going and opening your advertising agency, which I'm sure gave you an unfair advantage compared to someone who didn't have that experience. So walk me through your first steps after that. What things did you put in motion to start building out your agency?
Yeah, so, absolutely having that initial experience with e-commerce kind of made it a bit easier for me, because if it were me back in 2017, I would just jump into the agency world, just launch, throw up a random website and just start shouting like, hey, I'm an agency owner, come to me, I can handle your ads. That was the strategy I would have taken initially, but because I had more experience now, I knew that a little bit of planning is needed. So kind of my first steps were to even understand how an agency operates on a fundamental level. The agency owners or just any business owners who actually succeed versus those that don't. The ones that succeed, they work from the top-down approach, basically. And what I mean by that is they start working backwards. They start working from the biggest part of the question of starting an agency, which is, who is my target audience? That's the number one thing that I had to understand during that time, because from my experience running e-commerce brands, I knew that a general approach like an Amazon kind of brand, yes, it can work, but it's not scalable long term, right? What's scalable is you go niche specific, you're targeting those specific people who want only baby products, or only, even going more niche specific, baby diapers only. You can be the best baby diaper brand on this planet, things like those, where I knew that I had to be niche specific. So I looked back into my own experience to understand what is the audience that I personally already resonate with. And I'm an e-com brand owner. I know how people in the e-commerce world think, act, move, etc. So that was basically the easiest point of entry for me. And that's what most people don't realize is you don't want to go after something you have zero clue about. Yes, you can make it work, but it's not fair to the people you work with as well, because then you yourself are learning through their money that they're spending, which I don't think is ideal. Instead, you want to know what you are good at. It could be the smallest experience in the world. Maybe you're the best at lead generation for automotive brands, or maybe you're the best at lead generation for salons. Whatever it is, look back at your own experience and then choose from that. So that was the first step, understanding where to even enter. And then eventually from that understanding, how does an agency operate? Do I just charge people based on a certain fee, a percentage? How do the numbers make sense? How can I make the numbers make sense for my target audience? Certain numbers might work best for a salon owner, but for an e-com brand owner, those numbers might never work and you will never get a client, right? So you have to understand the dynamics of the numbers side of things. Numbers make or break any agency. That's the number one thing you understand. Then it's all about getting into the nitty gritty details. How can I target this ideal audience? What website can I create with the words and the colors that match this audience? All those things come after. But it's first understanding the fundamentals, starting from the top down approach. That's kind of how I did it, at least.
So when you got into this and you decided e-commerce, and seemed obviously a wise move because you had experience there, what did you do to get your first client?
So the thing is, again, it all goes back to already having momentum in this industry because I was already a YouTuber. I had already like 10, 15, 20,000 subscribers when I started my agency. And my people that were watching my YouTube videos were all e-commerce brand owners. So it was pretty much like a no-brainer for me to just go on my YouTube videos, one of my YouTube videos, and say, hey, I launched an agency. I can work with you. And during that time, I had very low, starting point prices for the agency because obviously nobody knew about my business. And in that sense, I wanted to enter. This is something so many people don't really do. They're afraid to work for free even, or to work for a lower rate than what they would charge normally. It's completely fine if you're new to do these things because at the end of the day, people trust other people. If you're an e-commerce brand owner who you work for free, you get them such good results that they're like telling 10 other founders that they know that, hey, this guy or this agency knows what they're doing. That's 9 other people who you could charge and make up for the time lost, so to speak, with the free guy that you work with, right? So that's was kind of my approach. I was totally fine working for free or over for a very low rate, even though at that time I'd already done over 6 and 7 figures. I was still fine working for free or a lower rate just to get entry and to get a testimonial. Testimonial is key, so that was my kind of approach, getting that first client. And within the first 3 weeks, I remember I got an automotive brand, which, by the way, that person still works with us to this day because we got them such good results. We worked with him for basically a lower rate and we got him very good results during that time because it was also his peak season, so it helped. But that kind of led us into getting more and more clients, brand awareness, all that stuff.
So were you always a solopreneur starting out, or did you have a team working with you, or what did that progression look like?
Yeah, so during that time when I got my first client, I had only one other team member, a media buyer, working with, because I couldn't handle my own brands and also YouTube and also the client all by myself. And I know more than enough through my own mistakes that I shouldn't try to do that because I'll get burnt out and the client will suffer, my agent, my brands will suffer, my YouTube will suffer, everything will go down the drain basically. So I hired immediately on Fiverr. I think it was Fiverr or Upwork. I don't exactly remember, but very quickly I hired somebody. I didn't have any processes set up during that time as to how to train these team members, what processes they should follow. So obviously the hire was pretty basic, but it was needed to work with the client, to work under me essentially. And it was only that one team member who helped me with that brand. I was still the main point of contact during that time. I was doing a lot of the things myself, but this supporting person, so to speak, was there to handle the nitty gritty details, and that made life a lot easier. I know most people, they're like, hey, I don't want to spend money when I don't have money yet, but that's kind of needed if you're serious about this at all.
So when you put the word out on your YouTube channel, were you flooded with opportunities, or was it more of a trickle? Were you surprised in either way that it worked out?
Yeah, I was very, very surprised that when I put out my word, absolutely 0 people reached out to me initially.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was interesting because, again, I had 10, 15, 20,000 subscribers in this niche, and it was still surprising that nobody was, that keen to do this. And again, it goes back to not only just having an offer, but having perceived value behind that offer. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not the most creative person, so my YouTube videos were very basic. My website during that time for the agency was very, very basic. I just thrown something up as quickly as I could because the number one thing I do right is speed. I can get things done very quickly and, in time, basically, or before time that it's due. So that kind of helped me during that time. But even then, even though I was very confident I could get results, nobody reached out to me initially. The first 1 to 2 weeks, crickets, basically. And, that kind of got me thinking as to, what was I doing wrong? Why did I have such a big audience? And even then, people were just zero people were reaching out to me. And it all came back to the point that I was not conveying my message in a proper manner. People knew I had an agency, but they didn't know what I did for them. They didn't know how much it cost. They didn't know the specifics. As a founder and as a business owner, not just me, anybody, they care more about, hey, how much money can you make me? Right? How much money do I spend? How much money can you make me? And this was the key things that were missing from my offers that I was putting in my videos during that time. I was just saying very bland messages like, hey, I'll handle your Google ads for you. I was not giving them case studies to make them trust me. I was not giving them specifics or numbers which resonated with their situation. It was like throwing stuff at the wall and just hoping something worked approach. So that took me a week or two to realize when nobody reached out to me that, hey, my messaging's probably off. I'm not reaching the right people, or I'm reaching the right people, but they're not understanding what I'm even saying. And when I switched that over, when I adjusted my messaging, colors, everything in terms of the overall approach I'm taking and the words I'm using, that's when people eventually started reaching out to me. And then that's when I was able to find that specific brand, which I wanted to work with.
Wow. Okay. So, what type of budgets were you working with when you first started out, and what does it look like today?
Yeah. So in terms of client budgets or my own ad spend for
Client budgets.
So in terms of client budgets, I was taking anybody that walked through the door during that time. I just wanted to work. I didn't care if it was $500 a month a brand or a $50,000 a month brand. I just wanted to prove that, hey, agency actually works. Because again, I had no experience in this industry. I was coming as a brand owner. That's all I knew, right? So during that time, I was
Hmm.
taking everybody that walked through the door. Which now that I think back to it, it wasn't the best approach, and I should have definitely not done that. But it allowed me to have a lot more learnings that I have right now, and teachings. But that's essentially what I started with. Now we only work with brands that do $50,000 in revenue or more per month in total revenue, basically. Doesn't matter if it's from Google ads or just in general. And that's because that criteria allows me to only support those brands which, number one, already have a proven product market fit. What I realized very early is I don't want to be the person who's trying to prove that that product works within that market. That's the founder's job. That's the e-commerce brand owner's job. That's not my job as an agent. My job is to show that product, which is already good, to the audience that wants that product. Right? That's my tagline, is to basically connect good products with people that need those products and makes their life better. Right? So that's initially what I learned is don't work with everybody. You want to work with people that have some sort of foundation in place, because if they have nothing in place and they're relying on you, if things go down the drain, they're going to be very, very mad at you. Even if their product it was the issue, even if their business was not built to scale at all, it will all come down crashing on your own head, which is not something you want to deal with, because it kind of ruins your own morale, number one, but number two, it takes away the valuable time you could be spending on brands which already have some sort of foundation in place, which you can then help expand and scale beyond.
Well, and e-commerce is a pretty difficult industry to break into if you have absolutely no history in it, right? So like if you're a brand of some sort of product and you're doing a couple thousand, maybe $10,000 in revenue, and especially if it's sporadic, so many brands die every single day, right? It's a really difficult uphill battle to work with a business owner that's probably on a shoestring budget. They're only doing a couple of grand a month, and there's going to be no money for advertising. You can't break in spending like $1,000 a month on ads. It just doesn't work that way, right? So can you kind of help explain, the difference between a pure startup versus the established brands?
A pure startup, in my opinion, and from what I have seen, is a startup that has no fundamentals in place. It's like when I've personally started back then, I was working with everybody, right? I was a startup. It's the same for an e-commerce brand. It's a startup is a brand who's trying to cater to everybody in their audience. If they're selling baby products, they're trying to cater to every single parent out, right? Which is not bad. But then you have to understand that, hey, some parents have babies who are 6 months old. Some parents who have babies who are almost a year old at this point, right? They have different needs. They're in different buying intent modes. They require different products and different needs for those products, right? You cannot approach every single person in this audience as a one size fits all approach, right? That's what I think a startup is a one size fits all approach. You're just understanding who your audience is. Flash forward, when you become an actual established brand, the basics that you should have in place is, hey, you should be able to explain who your perfect customer is. Those people that can, that's an established brand, in my opinion. They can say, hey, this is my person. This is a baby, or a parent whose baby is less than 6 months old. That is my ideal person. Or maybe somebody who's expecting. That's my ideal person. That is an established brand in my eyes, even if they have very low revenue. It's less about the numbers and more about, do you have a clear vision of what you are and who you're built for, right? That makes things a whole lot easier than me trying to make ads for a person who's expecting versus a person who's already had a baby 6 months ago.
Absolutely. All right, I want to talk about pricing because I think for those who are in the agency game or new to the agency game or trying to get into it, I think there's a massive curiosity on or a question around what do I charge and how do I charge in the most efficient way, the most fair way, and the best way to keep margins high. How do you guys handle pricing?
Yes, and this is something I really thought through for a long period of time. Understanding pricing was the right price, was the lowest price. And what I realized is, business owners, they will pay you as much as your perceived value is in their eyes. What I mean by this, and I'm going to give you an example of an external situation I've had with my gym trainer, for example. This is just a side story, but it relates to this. My gym trainer used to train in an area which was very low income or medium income. And because of that, his rates were very, very low to cater to that audience, right? Even though he was the best in the gym and training, he was the best in his field, he was an Olympian, he had won, actually gold medals. He was having to charge low. And the moment he increased his prices, people would drop off, people would ghost him. The moment he went from living in that low income area to now a higher income area, without changing anything, without changing his strategies, the way he teaches people, training, none of that, keeping that the exact same, he was able to double charge within a span of 2 days just by changing the location. So what I'm trying to get at is, you are only able to charge as much as the audience you are targeting. Of course, if you're targeting a beginner, a brand owner that just started a startup that can only has a maximum budget of $500 a month, you cannot charge him $5,000 a month. It's just feasibly not possible. No matter if you promise him the entire world, he's going to be in his own frame that, hey, I only have $500 a month for ads. How do you expect me to pay $5,000 for just your service? It's just not possible, right? So what that means is, from the get-go, your audience should be basically focused on what your ideal lifestyle is. Again, it's working top down. What is your ideal lifestyle? Do you want to be, doing certain things in your life, enjoying certain things, or are you completely fine having lower revenue levels but a lot of clients? That's what I had to go through. I had to understand, do I want to have 5,000 clients that pay me $100 a month, or do I want to have 50 clients who pay me $1,000 a month? Once you understand that, and that's where I decided my pricing, then you adjust your messaging to go after that. That's why I decided 50K or more minimum monthly revenue, because at that point, it makes more sense to pay me $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month versus $500 a month, the brand that I'm trying to charge 3,000, right? So that's how I approach pricing. Once I determined my ideal audience, then it was about, how can I make sure that I hire the top level team members to ensure my business stays in business and I'm able to provide a good quality service at the same time. Because what people realize is, starting an agency or any business for that matter, the half the battle is starting. The other half is getting the results to stay in business, right? Most people forget that, hey, now I have to actually do work and actually get good results for my people that I'm, taking money from. So for me,
Hmm.
this is how I just think. I want to do the best for the people that I work with, or if I can't do it, I will gladly refund them. I want to meet their expectations. And approaching it with that, I'm able to charge $2,000-$3,000 easily a month. That's just minimum. But again, it's all boils down to what lifestyle I wanted to begin with. That's how I determine pricing. And now, in terms of actual the specifics, I charge a monthly retainer along with a percentage of the ad spend, because I believe that's a win-win situation. The percentage of ad spend allows me and the team to work harder to hit certain goals. Whereas if it was just a monthly fee, it wouldn't matter to me if this made a 50K back this month or 5 million back this month, right? If it was just a set fee. So it's kind of a balance between both that I established.
I like that. So it's kind of a minimum retainer plus percent of ad spend.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. So you mentioned your team. What does your team look like now, and what was kind of the process of growing out your team?
So my team right now, it's mostly consists on the client side, at least, only one media buyer along with me within every brand that we work with. So we have Slack channels. Basically, we use Slack for internal communication, but every single Slack channel with the external clients, it has me and one other team member, who's a media buyer. And this is more of a boutique approach because I've noticed a lot of these, in my own experience as well, a lot of these agencies, they have like 50 people inside these channels and everybody's saying something different and nobody's on the same page. It adds a lot of friction, unnecessary friction to the overall relation we have with the client. So I like to keep it very boutique approach. Of course, I'm not doing the work at this point. I am more on the strategy level, top level view of, hey, what does this brand need in terms of strategy? And my media buyers, they handle all the nitty gritty details, communication with the clients, getting the results, all those things are handled by them. I'm just the top level person who's in there just checking things, basically. But growing out this team, very difficult to find good talent. That's what I will say. I see so many people, new business owners, especially. I made this mistake myself, hiring very quickly. And I heard this somewhere before. You want to hire slowly and fire fast. There is a lot of truth to this. You don't want to just go out and hire somebody who says on paper that they're the best on this planet. A lot of people talk, but when it comes time to showing results, they have nothing to back up their claims. So hiring was definitely a difficult portion, something I had to actually understand and do over a long period of time. But just going out, I like to have team members in Europe, in Asian countries, ideally Europe for media buyers. I found that they are often the most talented in that aspect. But going on, platforms like Upwork, freelancer.com, Fiverr, onlinejobs.ph, all these different avenues just to hire the team and building sort of an entry level requirements as to what they should be doing. Having a very good job post. I've seen that most people that are good, if your job post is good, they want to work with you because your job post is very detailed. You are outlining everything as they should know in terms of salaries, workload, all those things. The bigger your job post, the easier you can weed out the bad. Because most bad people, they won't even read through your job post. They'll just send you a generic message like, "Hey, hire me," and you can very easily tell who's the generic person versus who's actually took time to read through things. And if they're reading through at that point, you should already know they're invested and they are a potentially good candidate versus somebody who's copying and pasting the same application to 50 other employers who are trying to hire.
What's your main strategy for growing your client base? Now, I guess maybe I lead off with how large is your client base? How quickly does it grow, or what are your growth goals? And then how do you guys grow?
Yeah, so at any given time, our client base is anywhere between 25 to 30 different e-commerce brands that we work with. Right now, it's on the lower end, it's around 25-ish because it's summer and usually summer is the slower time period. But during these times, especially the slow seasons for growth in terms of client acquisition, I'm heavily focused on the social media side because, I have that YouTube presence. I'm very active on X, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm all very active on the podcast. All these things, this is the number one avenue of growth for me. Just organic traffic, showing the world that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not a beginner and I can help you do the same things I talk about. Just getting people to realize that. That's the number one avenue of growth. It's always been organic. The easiest clients I've closed, the easiest amounts of sales I've made have been through organic growth. Second is, of course, nowadays I'm doing a lot of paid advertising. Twitter ads is something which I believe is very unique that I do. And a lot of agency owners do that. That's something I've really tweaked and understood how they work. But also meta ads, Facebook ads. That's something I've been trying to incorporate recently to continue the growth process. And of course, something I do external is going out into the world, conferences, events, trying to find clients that way, networking, and just understanding people on a deeper level versus a surface level. All these things combined is what helps drive growth for the agency.
Do you work with a specific type of e-commerce business, or can it just, as long as they're e-com and they're doing 50K minimum revenue, is that the only requirement?
As long as they sell legal products, as long as their products are not, in the gray area, like for example, certain supplements, because these products are just not allowed on Google. You could hire the best Google ads person on this planet, but if your products are in the gray area, Google will give you issues, policy violations, all these things. So that's something I tend to avoid. So that's why I say only products that are legal. Anything that's not in the gray area is what I work with. And this can, again, be based upon what your advertising channel is. If you don't do Google, if you do like meta ads, they have different policies. You have to, research that, see what's allowed, what's not, and base your approach on.
Do you have a sweet spot for the type of business or type of e-com business you like to work with?
In terms of industries and niches, we like to base it on AOV, average order value, because I've personally noticed that high AOV brands do exceptionally well with Google Ads, anything above maybe 100, 200, $500 in AOV. So that's my sweet spot, and usually that leads to like high ticket brands like automotive brands, for instance, or industrial brands, or even brands with high end fashion. These are some of the sweet spots we like, but it's all based on AOV, average order value.
Have there been changes to Google in the past few years that have either changed how you guys advertise or do business? Has Google pulled any fast ones on you that you've had to adapt to?
Yeah, honestly, Google is always moving nowadays, at least introducing a lot of fast moves, which feels like, the floor beneath us has just kind of gotten removed or something. And now we have to scramble to find some safe, stable platform to stand on.
Mhm.
But it's mostly recently because of artificial intelligence and a lot of introductions to AI softwares, policies, etc., which is causing a lot of the campaigns we run to need to be re-optimized and redone in terms of the strategies. So, just catering our strategies to AI and implementing more AI, and just because that's what Google wants essentially. It wants more people and the old users to move towards AI and to let Google have more control. That's essentially what Google wants at the end of the day.
How has Google's AI mode for search affected advertising? Because I know for local businesses where my agency, we handle a lot of local business advertising and organic, it's made a big difference in how we do it. Is that the same for ecom?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with AI mode for shopping. Now, and this is something I just, yesterday I had a call with a new prospect, a client who wants to work with us, who was literally saying 90% of his people nowadays are using Chat GPT and AI mode to actually shop and to find, new products to buy. AI mode, all those things, that what they don't do is they don't remove the importance of the fundamental. I always go back to the fundamentals, foundations, things like how you display your products, the perceived value, what kind of strategies do you have in terms of SEO, all these things which relate to Google, they're the fundamentals of Google. It doesn't matter if AI mode comes through or if a whole robot now starts handling ads themselves, right? The fundamental, as long as you have those things in place, AI mode will prefer your products. AI mode will still showcase your product as a potential listing, as long as you prove to Google that, hey, you're a brand which, number one, caters to its customers, and number two, does what you say you're going to do, meaning you're not a fraudulent brand. Those two things, if you take care of, no AI mode, none of those changes are going to impact your results. It's a more of a matter of tweaking certain things like the wording or the backend product feeds, all those things to just cater to that. That's all that comes down to.
Gotcha. So you mentioned you also run advertising on Bing as well. Bing obviously doesn't have near the market share that Google does, but it still has enough to have an impact. Can you kind of explain the importance, or maybe it's the importance for some of your clients to run advertising on Bing versus not?
Yeah, good question. So, in terms of Bing ads, again, the beauty of being an e-commerce brand owner myself, actually doing these things myself before I started an agency, is I had been using Bing in a small manner for my own brands. And I realized that, hey, Bing, although 80% of your results will probably come from Google and barely 10 to 20% will come from Bing in terms of revenue, because at the end of the day, not a lot of people nowadays use Bing or even know what Bing is. So what I realized is Bing is a platform which, although it's small in terms of revenue, can be very, very profitable, because just like how you may have not even heard about Bing or you may not have thought twice about running Bing ads, a lot of your competitors don't run Bing. And that's what I saw with the ROAS that I was getting, the return on ad spend for a lot of the products I was running on Bing. It was not uncommon to have a ROI of 5x, 10x, even in some situations, a 20x ROI, meaning every dollar I was spending, I was getting 20 back on Bing. And unfortunately, it was not scalable, but that's besides the point. It was just proving itself to be a very, very profitable platform. So that was sort of the catalyst for me with my own brand, which when I started Google, I wanted to have a way to stand out from the other agencies that were already offering Google ads. And what was the easiest way? To offer Bing ads for free along with Google ads. So my offer was, hey, I'll run your Google ads for XYZ amount of money, but I'll do Bing ads for free on top of that. You don't have to pay me anything extra. Like very small, but it was that little change and in the offer and something different that the user was not used to. And that really kind of helped us scale the agency to the current point in terms of the overall scale. But yeah, in terms of Bing, it's still a small platform. Even to this day, very few people use it. And I believe it depends entirely on your niche that you're in. If your niche caters to younger people, using Bing's probably not the best idea because mostly from my experience, at least 30-year-olds and above only use Bing, 30, 40, 50 with a little bit of a higher income bracket.
Wow. Okay. So that was gonna be my next question. Is it more industry or product or age specific? And you nailed that one.
Right.
Um, so do you always look at the other platforms or, you'd mentioned Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now X. Do you guys look at other platforms when it's more specific to certain clients, or is it kind of, hey, we're gonna adjust to what you need or what we think, based on your industry and your niche, we think that you'll do the best on Google, Bing, and X, or Google and Facebook, but not really Twitter or any of the other platforms. How do you guys handle that?
Yeah, so the agency itself, my agency is a Google Ads agency only doing an additional Bing ads. That's the only two platforms we cover. We don't help with X or Facebook or anything like that. That's X and Facebook is something I use to advertise the agency for getting new clients, basically. So it's my own internal
Gotcha.
strategy. But my audience offering and the audience I go after is, hey, if you want to run Google ads or Bing ads, I'm the person that you should come. And that's usually the people we attract. They usually already have people in place for Meta ads or TikTok or anything else. So it's only, hey, they need Google ads and Bing ads, and we're their solution.
So is there still plenty of opportunity for those who are possibly listening today and interested in starting a digital agency? Maybe they have experience in Google Ads or they're in the process of learning it, or maybe now they're interested in learning how to run Google Ads with the idea of opening a Google Ads agency. What's the space look like? Do you think there's an AI disruption that's coming or happening, or is it still a great place to open a digital business?
At any stage of time, even when I started the agency back in 2021, there were a lot of competitors when it came to Google Ads. They were offering these wide claims. They were doing this and that for their clients within this space. So the competition was already there. Now we're in 2025. The competition is still there. Has it increased? Absolutely. But is there a room to enter and be different? Yes. The thing is now, and even it doesn't matter if it's now or 4 years ago when I started, you always need to have some sort of creative edge to your offering and to your service. If you are just another Google Ads agency, it's going to be very hard for you to survive. That's the reality. It doesn't matter when you start, if it's now or back then. So it all comes down to the creative offering. And that's why I did Bing ads for free along with Google. That was my creative offering, doing something different. So as long as you can hone onto that, it doesn't matter if you do Google ads, Meta ads, TikTok ads, there's always room for somebody to enter, disrupt the market and find their own client base, be stable and scale. I've been doing this for years. We've been very stable. We've been scaling year over year, right? So it's entirely possible, but it all boils down to you as a strategic business owner, the strategy and how you approach things. That's the key, more than the buttons you click within anybody's Google Ads account or any ad dashboard for that matter.
I love it. Well, and as we round out here, a final question. Do you see major changes coming to search or how people search given the advent of ChatGPT and AI and all the new technology that is, or it's not necessarily new technology, but it's new to the market, right? Where people are starting to shift their behaviors. Do you see that affecting your industry in a negative way or a positive way, or is it just a matter of adapting as it comes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing I will say about consumers from my understanding so far, from what I see with AI now getting introduced very heavily in the Google Ads space, is a lot of consumers are becoming very lazy in terms of
Mhm.
researching, looking at different listings coming up, different search ads, all these things. Consumers want the fastest point A to point B approach, right? They want to basically take the guesswork out of their purchases. So what do? They go on ChatGPT. They ask ChatGPT to compare the 5 gazillion listings out there for the products they're looking for and give them the best option for their needs XYZ, right? It's literally what they're doing on ChatGPT. They're communicating, they've trained their robot on ChatGPT, so to speak, to do these things consistently. And every search makes the robot smarter, right? So all that's happening within this space is the robot is deciding for the user now. Now, what does this mean for the agency owner or the brand owner who may be listening? Well, what that means is, again, it goes back to your foundations. You need to have foundations in place and fundamentals in place that cater to the robots a lot more than just the user. Before, you could get away with writing titles, descriptions, product images that were designed to be emotional for the user. Now, the robot has no emotions because it's zeros and ones. The robot needs inputs and outputs. That's all it understands. What does that mean? You need to have specific strategies in place for your titles that have certain keywords in there. Your product images need to be in a certain manner where the robot can analyze the image with its, AI tools and whatnot, understand what the product is, and then show it via ChatGPT searches and make it be eligible for that. All those things you have to understand what the robot wants, all from the titles to the very, very minute thing even. So it's all about, going back to your question, adaptability. How can you adapt your entire approach to cater to the robot's needs versus just the user's needs? Before it was just, hey, how do I, 80% of my effort should be for the user. 20% I could put in this keyword or that specific thing for the robot. Now it's more on the 50-50, leaning more towards the robot and influencing the robot. That's the only level of adaptability you need. Otherwise, the fundamentals will always remain as they are.
All right. Well, Shri, thank you so much. We could keep going on this for a while, but I know you're a busy man, got to get moving. For all those listening out there today who maybe want to learn more, maybe they want to follow you, check out your YouTube channel, or possibly work with you at Yoru Marketing, what are the best ways to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very active on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at dedicated young. And in the Instagram bio, you'll find my link to work with me if you run a brand, or if you just want to connect with me, feel free to DM me. I try to get to as many as I can. But Instagram would be the best option.
All right. Awesome. Well, Shri, thank you so much and best of luck to you in the rest of 2025.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.